Welcome to the fourth episode of our Excel Fundamentals for Data Analysts. Now, today we're going to be doing the second part of our data cleaning series. Now, we're going to be learning how to use Power Query to actually clean data on Excel. Now, if you guys remember in the previous episode, we actually used Excel to clean data. But there's another more effective way of actually cleaning data on Excel, which is using Power Query. Power Query is an advanced tool that was designed by Microsoft to assist you in cleaning data and have more flexibility in how you actually clean your data. So today I'm going to show you guys how to use Power Query to clean data. So the first thing that you want to do is just to make sure that you've got your Excel workbook open. So it just needs to be an empty Excel workbook. And as we did previously, we're going to go to data. So now what I'm trying to do, I want to import a CSV dataset that we will actually use to clean using Power Query, right? Cool. So I'm just going to import the dataset. I'm going to go to my downloads. So this is the same dataset that we were using previously. So I've already attached the link onto the video description. So just use the Messy employee dataset, and I'm going to import it. Now, if you guys remember the previous time, we just loaded the dataset. But if you want to directly clean the data using Power Query, what you want to do is you don't want to load the data, but you want to transform the data. So as you can see, I've got two options over here, load and transform. Loading is just going to take you directly to Excel and you're going to do your cleaning on Excel, but you can still go to Power Query once you've loaded the data. I'm going to show you guys towards the end. But now the best way to do it is just to say transform, because we know that our data is still messy and we'd like to clean it. Now, for some odd reason, for a couple of days, it's been actually appearing like that. Hopefully, you guys can actually see. So you see that the data set has actually been loaded over here, and you can see a couple of things. So maybe before we get into the detail of how you can actually transform or clean your data, I think it's important to understand or the overall interface and where you get certain things, right? So at the top over here, hopefully you guys can see the red one here. It's home. It's file, and then you've got home, then you've got your transform, then you've got your add column, then you've got your view. So those are the different sort of like options you've got at the top. Under home, you can actually close and load the data. So you do this if you've done your cleaning and stuff like that, and you just want to close and load the data. So whatever changes that you would have done on Power Query would have been saved. Refresh preview. So this is when you connected your data set and you just want to refresh the data so that you get the latest data set. So useful for any updates that happen on the data. And then there's a very cool feature over here, which is called manage columns. So manage columns allows you to choose what columns you'd like to keep, or you can actually remove columns. So if you say choose columns, this actually gives you the option of selecting which columns you'd like to have visible. So if you untick any of these other columns, they would not appear in this table. So this is a very cool feature that you can actually use. And there's also reduce rows, so you can actually delete rows using this feature, and you can use split columns. So this is actually one of the features that we will be using basic. So there's a couple of things that you can basically use to clean your data over here. And if you go further to transform, there's also a lot of things to replace values. This is very similar to find and replace on the Excel that we were actually using the previous time. There's really is a lot that we going to be using. So I think for the sake of this video, I'm just going to do the cleaning that we previously did on Excel using Power Query, the same thing, and we're going to get to the very same result. So that's the objective of this video. So I think the first thing that I'm going to look at over here is the column ID. But before we get into the detail, there's something very important. So if you go to your view over here, right? So there's a couple of things that you need to tick up. So if I untick any of this, so you guys can see that from this view, I cannot tell the quality of my data. But if I click on column quality, what this does, this tells me how much of my records are valid, how much of them are actually empty, and how much of them actually do have errors and all of those things. So that's something that's really, really important. So this actually saves you a lot of time, because immediately you can see that, oh, actually, my data set doesn't have any empty, there's no errors and stuff like that. That's something good to basically know. And if you, something very important, always make sure that at the bottom over here, you can see that it says column profile based on the top 1000. So you just want to change this to the entire data set. Just going to say based on the entire data set. So if you click on that, an option actually pops up. It's just that it's appearing on my second screen. It actually pops up and asks you, do you want to do it for the entire data set or that? Now that you've done it for the entire data set, I can see that on my employee ID, 100% of my records are actually valid. There is no errors. There's no empty records, right? Cool. The other one that I want you guys to tick is, I think it's the column distribution. Yes, column distribution. Now, what column distribution does, this tells you how much of the data that you have is actually unique or distinct, right? So distinct means that we've got 1,020 different employee IDs and 1,020 of them are unique. So this means we've got 1,020 different employee IDs and also 1,020 of them are uniquely from each other. So this actually means there is no duplicates. So if the distinct and the unique is the same, it means there is no duplicate because you've got 120 different numbers and you've also got 120 unique, meaning that each and every single one of those numbers are actually unique. But if you look at the second one, which is the first name, so you can see that we've got 8 different names. So in total, there is 8 different types of names over here. So that means that most of the cases the names are repeating because 0 of them are unique. So 0 of them being unique actually means that none of them appear once. That means they all appear more than once. So that means there's a lot of duplicate names, which makes sense why there would be 8 to actually cover the entire record. So this is something very good. So already you can tell that there is no duplicate. So there is no need for you to do a duplicate test here because we know that our employee ID is actually unique, right? So this is a really cool feature. So unlike on Excel, you won't be able to see this kind of quality like the column distribution and the column quality and stuff like that. So I feel like these are the two most important because they immediately tell you, okay, you can see here, we've got some empty records. So you know that you need to clean some data. And if I scroll further over here, you guys can see that, okay, cool, nothing is empty and everything seems pretty decent. Cool. So now that we know that our column is unique, so there's no need for us to do a duplicate test. So we're just going to leave it as it is. Now, next, we're going to go to our first name, right? So our first name, firstly, I don't have any issues because there is no empty records. There is no errors, no issue for me. And I'm just checking this is APC. So another very important thing when you're cleaning data on Power Query is to check this APC, or 123. So this actually tells you like the format of the data set on the column. So APC means it's actually text. So you can actually change all the different formats over here. So you've got that option actually to do it. I'm going to check the last names. Even on the previous data set that we did, we saw that there was no issues at all on the first name and the last name. So similar APC, we're happy with the formatting. Look, this is really good. And I would highly recommend that you use Power Query to clean your data more than cleaning it on Excel because it gives you more features and more flexibility and more capabilities that you can take advantage of in cleaning your data set. Now, the next area is the age. Now, if you guys remember on the previous episode, we had issues with this because of the empty records, right? So we've got a lot of nulls. Now, on Power Query, you can't really manually change all the nulls, right? But if you guys remember, on Excel, it would have been an empty. But what Power Query does, it automatically assigns a null. And this already tells you that 21% of your data set actually consists of empty records. So this already tells you the quality of your data. Now, what I'm going to do here, very important, is I'm going to go back to our home over here. So you can either do it on home or you can do it on transform, right? But I'm just going to do it on home. So if you go to home, under the age column, so just make sure to click on the age column and you can click replace values, right? So over here, you've got something called replace values. This is very similar to find and replace actually. Okay, cool. So which value do you want to find? So you can say you want to find null and replace this with 0. That is what we did on the previous sort of transformation. So I'm just going to replace all the nulls with 0. So there we go. So you see everywhere where we had a null is actually been replaced by a 0. Now, the other cool things to note is that over here on your right, we've got something called Power Query settings, properties, and applied sort of things, right? So the applied steps, this actually tells you all the transformation or all the data cleaning activities that you do. So you can see that I've just replaced values and it's telling me, okay, cool, this is the step that I actually applied. Now, you can actually, if you remove this step, it will undo the cleaning activity that you actually did. So that's something to pay attention to. So I know sometimes typing out the exact number that you're trying to replace can be a bit redundant sometimes, but there's another way of actually doing a replace. So I'm gonna remove this so you guys can see that the nulls are back. Now what I'm going to do, instead of typing the null on the find to replace, what I'll do, I will click on this column and I'll say replace value. And so because I clicked on this and I'm going to say right click, so I right clicked on this and I can see 2 or 3 options over here, copy, number, and replace value. I'm going to say replace values. Now, once I do that, you can see that the null has been added over here and I can just say 0. So that's another option. So sometimes you generally don't have to go around typing out the numbers that you want to replace. You can just right click over there. But yeah, the replace actually still works. So there's 2 ways that you can actually replace the null. So now we're happy with this column and we're happy that the age, well, my understanding, this is a decimal number. A person's age should not be a decimal number. So this format is actually wrong. So that's something to really pay attention to. You need to understand what column you're dealing with and understand what is the best format that you need to actually apply, right? So the way that you can change it to a whole number, because this is actually an age, you transform it to the correct format. So when you're cleaning data, some of the key most important thing is checking if there's a duplicate, checking if there's any empty records, replacing any empty records, and also the format of the column does matter. You need to genuinely think about the format and understand if it's actually the correct format for the data set that you are actually working on. Now, I'm happy with this. There is no empty. Now you can see that it's been updated. There is no empty record at all, so which is actually good. Now, the next part is the region. Now, if you guys remember, we were not happy with the region in the previous episode because we were like, okay, cool. Now you've got the role, the department that the person actually belongs to, and you've got the region. But now, if I were to do some analysis and I wanted to know how many DevOps are in California in total, I won't be able to tell because the data is combined, right? So it's really tricky, and I feel like the data set won't be really that great. And sometimes they say you want to know how many DevOps are available in total. You can't because you've got a combination of California, this and this. So it makes the analysis of the data really messy. So what I'm going to do, if you guys remember previously on this one, we used text to column. But on Power Query, there's another cool feature. So I'm going to right click over here. I'm going to click over here. And you guys can see that at the top under home, we've got something called split column. So split column allows you to separate your columns depending on what is actually the best way to do that. So similar with text to column, you guys can see that you can do this by delimiter or by special characters, by position. There's so many ways that you can do it. But in our case, I believe that there is a delimiter. So I'm going to say delimiter. Once you click on delimiter, you see that Power Query automatically sees what actually is causing the separations, right? So you can either manually type this out yourself or you can just select the one that actually works. But Power Query has automatically detected and selected custom and selected this, which is what I was going to do anyway, right? So what you need to do from this, you just need to say, okay, so now can you guys see that we've got department region 1, department region 2, and we have the city separated, the region separated, and the department separated. And you've got your status over here, right? Cool. So the only thing that we need to do from here is that we just need to make sure that we rename this correctly. So I'm just gonna click over here and I'm gonna remove department, right? And I'm gonna do the same over here and I'm gonna remove region. Great. Cool. Now, just like that, we have a clean data set, right? So department is over here, no empty records. The formatting, I'm happy. It's ABC because it's actually text, no problem. Region, ABC, I'm also happy, no empty records. Seems like our data set is actually clean. And you guys can see that over here on our applied steps, we can see everything that we have been doing to actually format our data set. So this actually keeps a record, a trail record of what exactly we are doing with our data set. Now, moving on to the next one. The next one is actually status. So I think even on the previous data set, we had no issues with status, no empty records, 100%, no errors and all of that. So I'm generally happy with that. So I've got no problem over here. So we can move on to the next column. The next one is the date column. Well, the date seems to be valid, right? And you can already see that it has selected the calendar format. So you can either change it to date and time, but I think the date one is fine. So you can already see that the date has already been in the correct format. So formatting is very important as you're cleaning data. Never forget that. Now let's go further and see. Cool. Now we've got our friend over here, salary, right? I'm going to show you guys something very interesting. So if you remember previously here, we wanted to convert this into a currency format. I think one of the best tricks that I will give you guys or advice is that whenever a data set fails to be transformed in the correct format, that's when you know that there is data cleaning issues in your data set, right? Cool. So something that I'm gonna basically do now is that I'm gonna check on the salary. So salary, this is supposed to be some sort of currency, right? So if I change this to currency, we're getting an error, right? Now, the reason why we are getting an error on this one is because you can't convert this into a currency yet because there's the reason, if you guys remember the previous one, we had a comma, we had a dot instead of a comma. So the first step, we need to replace the dot with the comma, right? Because that's how, depending on your settings, that's how you need to do it. But if it's actually working on your end, that means the way that your Excel has been set up, commas of or so full stops are actually acceptable. But in this case, they're not acceptable. So I need to change this into a comma. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to click over here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use replace values. Remember, on the previous one, we actually used find and replace. So I'm going to say remove the full stop or dot, whatever you call it, with a comma. And yeah, there we go. So now I have changed most of this to the format, but if you guys remember previously, there were some NAs and all of that. So if I try to change this into a number format currency, cool. Okay, seems like some of them actually did change. But if you look at our stats over here, there's a few that are valid, there's errors, there is a lot of things that are actually going wrong. So if we firstly we need to understand what's actually going wrong. So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to check if there's any, just as we did. So you might find that there's NAs, which obviously I believe we do have NAs. So I'm going to look for NAs. There we go. Cool. So all the NAs that we have over here, we need to replace them with as 0. So I'm going to do this, replace values. I'm going to say NAs, not applicables, replace with 0. Cool. Now I've replaced all the NAs with a 0 and okay, cool. And I'm just gonna remove the filter. So I think we can't see most of the numbers because we've got a filter. So I'll just come over here and replace that filter. Cool. So now I have replaced the filter. Then there's no filter. We can see all the numbers. Now I'm gonna try to change this to currency. Let's see if we're getting an error. Cool. Seems like we don't have any error anymore. So you can see that 100% of the data set is actually valid. And as you scroll down, all of the numbers have been changed into a currency, right? Very important. So I was not supposed to actually filter the data set because now I had to replace the filtering. So you could have done it without adding the filtering. But because filtering is actually an applied step, you could just go over there and just replace it. So now we have our salary data set looking good. Now we can move on. Formatting is very important. Formatting something because when you start to work with a data set and it's not in the correct format, you will get issues. So always make sure that you change the formatting of your data. And that's the easiest way to actually recognize that your data is actually not clean. Now the next one is emails. So emails APC, we don't have an issue with the emails, seems to be in the right format. So we're just gonna move, but you can see that none of the emails are actually unique. So that means most of the emails all of the emails actually are duplicates. So this is actually fundamentally a problem, but I don't think there's anything that we can do from our end. It's more of an investigation that our client or the company needs to basically do. Then phone number, I think this one is still fine. It's in the number format. None of them are repeating, so I don't think there's really much that we can do over here with the phone numbers. Honestly, we could replace the minus with the plus, but I don't know what value this would do. So as a data analyst, you need to make those calls sometimes whether cleaning something actually adds value or not. So you could replace it with a plus, but I don't see any value in us doing that. Then we've got performance score. So even on the previous data set, we never had an issue with the performance score because it's in the correct format. There is no empty records. Yeah, it's pretty much fine. And if you just click on the filter bar, you can see that, okay, everything has been spelled correctly. There's no different types of excellence. There's just one. There's no different types of average. There's just one. There's only one good. There's only one poor. So happy with the data set overall. So the last one, this is remote work. So this is a true or false. So what you can see that what Power Query has already done for us is that it has automatically determined that this is a Boolean value. Now, a Boolean value means that it's a true or false, right? If it's a true value, it just gives it a Boolean type of value. So you can see that this is a true or false. So Power Query is smart like that. It actually sees all those things. And just like that, we have cleaned our data set using Power Query. And you guys can see that it's actually quicker to clean your data on Power Query than it is to actually clean it on Excel. Now, there's obviously a lot of features that you can use to actually clean your data. You can use first rows as headers and stuff like that. This is really cool because it actually, if you find in a case where your heading names are actually here instead of being at the top, you just use first row as headers. This allows you to promote them to move to the top. So overall, that is how you clean data in Power Query. There is a lot of sort of functionalities, but we'll do a separate video on Power Query, but this is sufficient for us to do the same data cleaning that we did on Excel, and we still have a lot of options to actually clean the data. So what I'm going to do, once you're done doing your data cleaning, you can see that all your steps are saved over here. What you need to do, so if you do this drop down, you've got close and load, you've got close load to, but I think what you want to do is just say close and load. So you will close your data set, and then it will then load this data set. So I'm going to say close and load. So what should happen now is that the data that we cleaned on Power Query should now appear on Excel. Now here's our data set cleaned with all the formatting and all of that sorted for us. And that's how you basically clean your data using Power Query. And I highly recommend actually cleaning your data on Power Query. Now, the other thing, let's say it happens that you're already here. Let's say you loaded your data set by mistake, but you still want to clean it, right? You can still go to Power Query. All you need to do is just select on this table. And then over here, you can see at the end, you've got something called Query. Once you click on Query, you've got something called Edit. So when you click on Edit, that's how you go back to Power Query. So yeah, basically, so if you guys want to clean data using Power Query, which I highly recommend, this is how you actually do it. So hopefully this video was of value to you guys.